The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched out like a metal ocean under the artificial stars. Hundreds of beings from across the galaxy sat in floating chairs that moved slowly around the central speaking platform. The air smelled of different worlds, salt from the water planets, sulfur from the volcanic systems, and the clean scent that followed the energy beings wherever they went. Ambassador Lee Dae-ho stood at the speaking platform, his dark suit looking simple next to the colorful robes and metal armor of the other delegates. He was 45 years old, with gray starting to show in his black hair. His face looked tired, but his eyes were sharp and focused. In his hands, he held a small data pad that contained 30 years of human service records. The council had been meeting for 6 hours already. They talked about trade routes and mining rights, about which species could build new colonies and which ones had to wait. The humans were mentioned only once when Counselor Vextar asked if the human work crews could handle the cleanup of the Karathi debris field faster. Lee Dae-ho waited his turn to speak. He watched the other ambassadors as they made their requests and complaints. The tall, blue-skinned Zenthari wanted more funding for their mining operations. The insect-like Thraxi demanded exclusive rights to 3 new star systems. The energy beings from the hegemony spoke in light patterns that the translation machines turned into words about territorial expansion. None of them mentioned the humans who had died cleaning up their messes. None of them talked about the human engineers who worked 20-hour days to keep their space stations running. None of them seemed to remember that human doctors had saved millions of alien lives during the plague outbreaks of the last decade. Finally, Lee Dae-ho's name appeared. On the speaking schedule, he walked to the center of the platform, his footsteps echoing in the huge space. The noise of conversation slowly died down as the other delegates turned to look at him. "Honored Council," Lee Dae-ho began, his voice carrying clearly through the translation systems. "I bring the final report of human contributions to galactic civilization." He activated his data pad, and holographic numbers appeared in the air around him. The display showed cargo ships and supply runs, medical missions and engineering projects, peacekeeping operations, and disaster relief efforts. 30 years of work condensed into glowing charts and graphs. In the past year alone, Lee Dae-ho continued, human personnel completed 47,000 supply missions to Outer Rim colonies. Human medical teams treated over 2 million patients across 15 different species. Human engineers maintained life support systems on 312 space stations. The numbers floated in the air, but Lee Dae-ho could see that. Most of the council members were not really paying attention. Some were having quiet conversations with their assistants. Others were reading reports on their own data pads. A few were asleep. Counselor Vextar, a being that looked like a walking tree with too many arms, made an impatient gesture. Yes, we know the humans work hard. Very useful. What is your point, Ambassador?" Lee Dae-ho felt something cold settle in his chest. After 30 years of loyal service, this was how they saw his people. Useful. Like tools or machines. The point, Counselor Vextar, is that humanity requests representation in this council, equal to our contributions. We ask for voting rights, proportional to the work we do for galactic civilization. A sound like laughter came from the Thraxi section. The insect beings clicked and chittered to each other in a way that the translation machines could not convert to words. But Lee Dae-ho understood the meaning well enough. Counselor Zekta, the lead Thraxi representative, stood up on her 6 legs. Her mandibles clicked together as she spoke. "The humans want voting rights? How amusing. Next, will the maintenance robots demand representation too?" More laughter echoed through the hall. Not from all the species, but from enough of them to make Lee Dae-ho's hands clench into fists. "The Thraxi position is clear," Zekta continued. "Humans are useful pets, nothing more. They do the work that needs doing because that is their nature. But pets do not make policy. Pets do not vote on the future of civilization." The word pets hit Lee Dae-ho like a physical blow. He had expected rejection. He had even expected insults. But to be dismissed so completely, so casually, after everything his people had sacrificed for these aliens. He looked around the hall at the hundreds of faces, searching for any sign of disagreement with the Thraxi position. He found a few, beings who looked uncomfortable, but none who spoke up. The silence stretched on until it became clear that the council agreed with Counselor Zekta. Lee Dae-ho closed his datapad with a soft click. The holographic displays vanished, taking 30 years of human achievement with them. "I see," he said quietly. Then louder. "The human delegation withdraws from all council operations, effective immediately." The words fell into the hall like stones into still water. For a moment there was complete silence. Then Counselor Vextar made that impatient gesture again. "Withdraws? What does that mean exactly?" Lee Dae-ho straightened his jacket and picked up his datapad. "It means, Counselor Vexitar, that humanity is done serving as your useful pets. Good day." He walked off the speaking platform and out of the great hall. His footsteps echoed loudly in the sudden quiet. Behind him, he could hear the sound of conversation starting up again, but it sounded different now, uncertain. Within an hour, Lee Dae-ho was aboard his ship, sending coded messages to every human, outpost, colony, and fleet in the galaxy. The messages were short and simple. "Come home, now." Park So-min received the message at the Karathi Supply Depot, where she was coordinating the delivery of medical supplies to 12 different worlds. She read it twice, then began shutting down her operations. Her team of human workers moved quickly and efficiently, loading their equipment and preparing their ships for departure. "Where are we going?" asked her assistant, Yoon Min-soo. "Away," Park So-min replied. "Far away." Across the galaxy, the same scene played out hundreds of times. Human engineers abandoned their posts on alien space stations. Human doctors left their patients in the middle of treatment. Human peacekeepers powered down their patrol ships and set course for the edge of known space. They left behind no explanations, no forwarding addresses, no way to contact them. The humans simply vanished into the dark between the stars, taking with them 30 years of knowledge, experience, and quiet competence. The Galactic Council continued their meeting as if nothing had happened. They passed new trade agreements and approved mining rights. They divided up territories and made plans for the future. None of them seemed to notice that the galaxy had just become a much more dangerous place. 6 months had passed since the humans disappeared. The first signs of trouble started small, like cracks in a wall that nobody noticed until the whole building began to shake. Counselor Vextar stood in his private office looking at reports that made no sense. 3 supply ships had failed to reach the outer colonies this week. The automated systems that were supposed to replace human logistics kept breaking down in ways that the computer repair teams could not fix. "Where is the problem?" Vexitar asked. His assistant, a young member of his own species with bright green bark and eager eyes. "The computers say everything is working perfectly," the assistant replied, "but the ships keep getting lost. They arrive at the wrong planets, or they run out of fuel in empty space, or their cargo gets mixed up." Vextar made an angry sound deep in his throat. The humans had made supply runs look so easy. They never got lost. They never ran out of fuel. Their cargo always arrived exactly where it was supposed to go. "Get me the logistics programming team," Vextar ordered. "Tell them to fix this immediately." But the programming team had been trying to fix it for weeks. The supply system was not. Just one program, but thousands of small programs all working together. Each program talked to the others in ways that the original designers had never written down. The humans had built the system over many years, adding new pieces and making changes as needed. Now that they were gone, nobody understood how it all fit together. On the mining world of SciFiPrime, the situation was getting much worse. The planet's atmosphere was thin and poisonous, so all the miners lived in sealed domes connected by tunnels. The life support systems that kept the air clean and the temperature steady had been designed by humans 20 years ago. Commander Kim Woo-jin had been the only person who really understood how the systems worked. He had grown up on space stations, breathing recycled air and drinking recycled water. He knew by sound when an air filter was getting clogged and by smell when the water recyclers needed new chemicals. He could fix problems before they became dangerous. Now, Kim Woo-jin was gone, and the life support systems were failing one by one. The first dome lost its heating system during the night shift. 200 miners woke up shivering in air so cold they could see their breath. The automatic repair systems tried to fix the problem, but they could not find the broken part. The miners had to wear their protective suits inside the dome until emergency heaters could be brought from other colonies. The second dome lost its air recycling system 3 days later. The miners noticed the air getting stale and hard to breathe. The emergency alarms should have gone off, but the alarm system was connected to the air recycling system in a way that nobody understood. Without the alarms, the miners did not know how bad the problem was until people started getting sick. By the end of the week, half the domes on SciFiPrime were running on backup systems. The backup systems were only meant to work for a few hours during repairs. They were not designed to keep thousands of people alive for days or weeks. The Zenthari government sent their best engineers to fix the problems. The engineers looked at the human-built systems and shook their heads. Everything was connected to everything else in ways that seemed impossible. The air recyclers talked to the water systems. The water systems talked to the power generators. The power generators talked to the heating systems. And all of it was controlled by computers that used human programming languages that the Zenthari had never learned. "How did they make it so complicated?" asked Chief Engineer Zontar, staring at a wall covered with pipes and wires and blinking lights. "I do not think they made it complicated," replied his assistant. "I think they made it simple, but we do not understand their kind of simple." Dr. Choi Ye-jin had spent 15 years studying the diseases that could jump from one species to another. Her research station in the neutral zone between 3 different star systems was the only place in the galaxy where scientists could safely work with the most dangerous germs and viruses. The research station was gone now, along with Dr. Choi and her entire team. The building was still there, orbiting a small moon, but it was empty and dark. All the equipment had been taken away. All the research data had been erased. All the carefully stored samples of viruses and bacteria had been destroyed. 3 weeks. After the humans left, the first reports of a new plague came from the Outer Rim colonies. The disease spread quickly from person to person, but it was not like any plague the galactic medical teams had seen before. It affected different species, in different ways. Some aliens got sick with fever and weakness, others developed strange rashes or breathing problems. A few species seemed immune, but they could carry the disease to others without knowing it. The medical teams tried to stop the plague the same way they had stopped diseases in the past. They quarantined the sick people. They gave out vaccines. That had worked before. They sent medicine to the infected colonies. Nothing worked. The plague kept spreading. Dr. Yexnim, the head of the Galactic Medical Council, called an emergency meeting. Representatives from 12 different medical schools and research centers gathered in the council chambers to discuss the crisis. "We need Dr. Choi Ye-jin," Dr. Yexnim said simply. "She is the only person who understands cross-species diseases well enough to stop this plague." "But we do not know where she is," replied Dr. Korth from the Thraxi Medical Academy. "The humans left no forwarding address. They are not answering any messages." "Then we must find them," Dr. Yexnim declared. "Send search teams to every system they use to operate in. Check their old colonies and research stations. Someone must know where they went." But the search teams found nothing. The human colonies were empty, their buildings stripped of everything useful. The research stations had been cleaned out completely. Even the garbage had been taken away. It was as if the humans had never existed at all. The emergency meetings in the council chambers were getting longer and more desperate. Every day brought new reports of systems failing, colonies in trouble, and problems that nobody knew how to fix. Counselor Zekta, who had called the humans useful pets, now found herself wishing those pets would come back. Her own species was having trouble with their food production systems. The automated farms that fed billions of Thraxi had been designed with human help. Now that the humans were gone, the farms were producing less food every month. "How long before we find them?" Zekta asked during one particularly bad meeting. "We are trying," replied Counselor Vextar. "But the galaxy is very large, and the humans were very good at hiding their tracks." "They were always good at the things we needed them to be good at," Zekta said quietly. "Perhaps we should have remembered that." The council chamber fell silent. For the first time in 6 months, some of the members were beginning to understand what they had lost. 1 year after the humans vanished, the galaxy was dying. Not all at once, but slowly, like a great machine running out of oil. Every day brought news of another system failure, another colony in trouble, another crisis that nobody knew how to solve. The Karathi Syndicate was the first major civilization to completely collapse. For 300 years, they had controlled the most important trade routes in the galaxy. Their massive cargo ships moved goods between thousands of worlds, carrying everything from food to medicine to raw materials for building spaceships. The Karathi ships used quantum navigation systems that could calculate jumps through hyperspace with perfect accuracy. The ships could travel from one side of the galaxy to the other in just a few days, following routes that avoided dangerous areas like black holes, asteroid fields, and pirate strongholds. Engineer Yun Tai Ho had designed those navigation systems when he was just 25 years old. He had spent 15 years improving them, adding new features and making them more reliable. The quantum computers that ran the navigation systems were so complex that even other human engineers had trouble understanding them completely. When Yun Tai Ho left with the rest of the humans, he took all his knowledge with him. The navigation systems kept working for a while, following the routes that were already programmed into their memory banks. But space is not a safe place. New dangers appear all the time. Asteroid fields drift into old shipping lanes. Pirates move their bases to new hiding spots. Solar storms change the way hyperspace currents flow. The quantum navigation systems needed constant updates to stay safe and efficient. Without Yun Tai Ho to program those updates, the Karathi ships began to get lost. The first ship disappeared, near the Vortex Nebula. It was carrying medical supplies to a plague-stricken world, but it never arrived. Search teams found wreckage scattered across 3 different star systems, as if the ship had been torn apart by jumping into hyperspace at the wrong angle. The second ship appeared in normal space inside a star. The crew had just enough time to send one emergency message before their ship was vaporized by temperatures hot enough to melt steel in seconds. The third ship came out of hyperspace moving so fast that it could not slow down. It flew through the Karathi home system like a bullet, past all the planets and space stations, out into the empty darkness beyond. The crew was still alive, but they were traveling at nearly the speed of light. By the time they could turn around and come back, everyone they knew would be dead of old age. Within 6 months, the Karathi lost more than half their fleet. The remaining ships were too afraid to make long jumps through hyperspace. They stayed close to home, making short trips between nearby systems. The great trade empire that had connected the galaxy for centuries shrank down to a few dozen worlds, then a few worlds, then just the home system. The collapse of Karathi trade routes caused problems everywhere. Colonies that depended on imported food began to starve. Worlds that sold raw materials could not find buyers. Factories shut down because they could not get the parts they needed to keep running. Piracy exploded in the regions where Karathi ships used to patrol. Without the threat of well-armed cargo vessels and their escort fighters, pirate gangs grew bold. They attacked merchant ships, raided colonies, and demanded tribute from anyone who wanted safe passage through their territory. The Galactic Council tried to send their own peacekeeping fleets to stop the pirates, but they quickly discovered another problem. Most of their peacekeeping ships had been built in human shipyards or designed by human engineers. Without human maintenance crews, the ships broke down faster than they could be repaired. Captain Bei Su-jin had been the Council's best strategist for dealing with pirates and smugglers. She understood how criminals thought, because she had grown up on the rough frontier worlds where honest work was hard to find and easy money was always tempting. She knew which pirate gangs could be negotiated with and which ones had to be destroyed. She knew how to set up patrol routes that covered the most space with the fewest ships. Now Captain Bei was gone, and the Council's anti-piracy efforts were failing everywhere. Their fleets flew into obvious traps. They wasted fuel patrolling empty systems while pirates attacked convoys just a few light years away. Some pirate gangs were actually getting stronger by capturing Council ships and adding them to their own fleets. The food shortages were getting worse every month. Many agricultural worlds depended on atmospheric processors to keep their air breathable and their weather stable. These machines were incredibly complex, managing the delicate balance of gases and temperatures that allowed crops to grow on planets that would otherwise be frozen wastelands or poisonous deserts. Scientist Jang Min-ho had been the galaxy's leading expert on atmospheric engineering. He had designed processors for more than 50 worlds, each one carefully customized for local conditions. Some planets needed more oxygen in their air. Others needed protection from dangerous radiation. A few needed artificial gravity generators to keep their atmospheres from drifting away into space. Without Jang Min-ho to maintain and repair the atmospheric processors, the machines began to break down. The problem started small. A slight change in air pressure here, a few degrees of temperature difference there, but atmospheric systems are like living things. Small problems grow into big problems very quickly. The farming world of Nexus 7 lost its main atmospheric processor during harvest season. The machine that controlled air pressure across half the continent suddenly stopped working. Within hours, the thin atmosphere began to leak away into space. The crops died in the fields as the air became too thin to breathe. 10 million people lived on Nexus 7. The planetary government tried to evacuate them to other worlds, but they did not have enough spaceships to move so many people quickly. Emergency shelters were set up around the few remaining atmospheric processors that still worked, but there was not enough room for everyone. The evacuation took 6 months. By the time the last refugees left Nexus 7, 3 million people had died from breathing air that was too thin or too poisonous to keep them alive. Similar disasters struck other agricultural worlds. Some lost their weather control systems and were destroyed by storms. Others had their soil chemistry systems fail, turning fertile farmland into poisonous waste. The galaxy's food production dropped by more than half in just 1 year. The Galactic Council held emergency meetings every day, but there was nothing they could do. They tried to build new atmospheric processors, but the designs were too complex. They tried to repair the broken ones, but they did not understand how the systems worked. The technical manuals that Jang Min-ho had left behind were written in human mathematical notation. The equations used concepts that other species had never developed. Even simple calculations required knowledge that took human engineers years to learn. Dr. Kexanal, the Council's chief science advisor, spent months trying to translate just one manual. The document explained how to calculate air pressure changes. On a planet with 3 moons, Dr. Kexanal had 12 degrees in physics and mathematics, but the human equations made no sense to him. "They think differently than we do," Dr. Kexanal told the Council during one particularly frustrating meeting. "Their mathematics is built on assumptions that we do not share. Their engineering follows principles that we have never discovered. Are you saying they are smarter than us?" asked Counselor Vextar, his voice sharp with anger. "No," Dr. Kexanal replied carefully. "I am saying they are different from us. They see solutions that we do not see. They ask questions that we do not think to ask." The council chamber fell silent. 3 civilizations had already collapsed completely. Food shortages were causing riots on dozens of worlds. Pirate attacks were making travel dangerous throughout half the galaxy, and nobody knew how to fix any of it. For the first time in galactic history, the Council was forced to admit that they needed help, but the only people who could help them had vanished without a trace. The search for the humans became the largest operation in galactic history. Every available ship, every scanning device, every deep space probe was sent out to find them. The Galactic Council offered rewards so large that entire civilizations joined the hunt. They promised to give whole star systems to anyone who could bring back even one human. Counselor Vextar stood in the command center of the search operation, watching thousands of red dots move across a holographic map of the galaxy. Each dot was a search ship following a different trail, checking a different theory about where the humans might have gone. "Report," Vextar ordered. Commander Zelok, a military officer from the hegemony, stepped forward. His energy body flickered, with patterns that showed frustration and confusion. "We have searched 47,000 star systems," Zelok said. "We have followed every hyperspace signature that human ships ever made. We have checked every planet they ever visited, every space station they ever used, every asteroid mining operation they ever ran." "And?" Vextar asked, though he already knew the answer. "Nothing. They have vanished completely." Vextar made an angry sound. 30 million humans do not just disappear. They need food, water, air to breathe. They need places to live. Someone must have seen them. But nobody had seen them. The humans had prepared for this moment better than anyone had imagined possible. Captain Bei Su-jin had spent years creating false hyperspace signatures that led searchers to empty systems. She had set up fake supply drops that made it look like human ships had stopped at certain planets, when really they had never been there at all. The search teams found the fake evidence and followed it eagerly, thinking they were getting close to finding the missing humans. Instead, they found carefully placed clues that sent them in circles. A hyperspace signature that seemed to point toward the galactic core actually led to a dead end near the rim. Supply caches that looked recently used turned out to be decades old. Captain Bei had been very good at her job. She understood how military minds worked, because she had worked with alien officers for many years. She knew they would search in patterns, following the most logical routes first, so she made sure the logical routes led nowhere. The humans had not taken the logical routes. They had gone somewhere that nobody expected, using methods that nobody understood. While the galaxy searched desperately for the humans, the crisis at home kept getting worse. Wars had broken out between species that used to be allies. Everyone was fighting over the few remaining resources that still worked. The Zenthari and the Thraxi were at war over a human-built mining station that processed rare metals needed for spaceship engines. Both species claimed the station belonged to them. Neither species could actually run the station without human engineers, but they fought over it anyway. The war had been going on for 6 months. Hundreds of ships had been destroyed. Thousands of soldiers had died. The mining station itself had been damaged so badly in the fighting that it would probably never work again. Similar wars were happening all over the galaxy. The energy beings of the hegemony were fighting 3 different species over control of human-designed power generators. The Waterworld colonies were at war with the desert planets over human-built water processing plants. The Galactic Council tried to stop the fighting, but they had no power left. Half their member species had stopped paying attention to Council decisions. The other half only showed up to the meetings to argue with each other. "This is chaos," declared Counselor Zekta during one particularly loud meeting. "We are destroying ourselves fighting over machines we cannot even operate." "Then perhaps we should focus on finding the people who can operate them," suggested Dr. Yexneem, the medical officer who had been trying to stop the plague for months. The plague was still spreading, by the way. Without Dr. Choi Ye-jin and her research, the medical teams could only treat the symptoms of the disease. They could not cure it or prevent it from spreading to new worlds. Billions of people had gotten sick, Millions had died. The breakthrough in the search came from an unexpected source. A team of archaeologists working in the ruins of an old human colony found something that everyone else had missed. Hidden in the basement of an abandoned building was a message beacon, so old and covered with dust that the search teams had walked past it dozens of times. The beacon had been activated recently. Someone had turned it on just a few weeks ago, then left it broadcasting a signal too weak to be noticed unless you were looking in exactly the right place. The message was short and simple. It contained coordinates to a star system on the very edge of known space and a few words in the human language. You taught us that we were expendable. We learned the lesson well. The coordinates led to an empty system with one small, rocky planet orbiting a dying red star. The planet had no atmosphere, no water, no signs of life. Scanning devices found no traces of human activity, no buildings, no ships, nothing at all. But there was something else. A small probe, human-built, orbiting the planet in a slow, lazy circle. The probe was broadcasting a message on repeat, over and over again. "If you are receiving this message," the recording said in Ambassador Lee Daeho's calm voice, "then you have found the first beacon. Congratulations! There are 47 more beacons scattered throughout the galaxy. Each beacon will give you coordinates to the next beacon. When you have found all 48 beacons, you will receive instructions on how to contact us." The Council's best mathematicians calculated that it would take years to find all the beacons, assuming they could solve each clue correctly. The humans had created a puzzle so complex that it might be impossible to complete. "Why are they making this so difficult?" asked Counselor Vexus Tar after hearing the message for the 10th time. "Because they can," replied Dr. Kexenol quietly. "Because they want us to understand how hard it is to find something that does not want to be found." The search for the beacons became a new obsession for the Council. Teams of their smartest people worked day and night to solve each clue, to find each hidden message, to follow each trail that the humans had left behind. Meanwhile, the galaxy continued to fall apart. More civilizations collapsed. More wars started. More people died from diseases that could have been cured, accidents that could have been prevented, disasters that could have been stopped. The humans had been gone for 3 years now. The galaxy that they left behind was a shadow of what it used to be. Trade routes that had existed for thousands of years were abandoned. Technologies that had improved life for billions of people were breaking down and could not be repaired. The member species of the Galactic Council were learning a hard lesson about the difference between ruling and governing, between giving orders and solving problems, between being important and being necessary. They had thought the humans were just workers, just servants, just useful tools that could be replaced when they wore out. Now they understood that the humans had been the glue that held galactic civilization together. Without that glue, everything was falling apart. The Council had found 1 beacon out of 48. At their current rate of progress, it would take them nearly 200 years to find them all. The galaxy did not have 200 years to wait. 5 years after the humans disappeared, the galaxy was barely recognizable. The Galactic Council now controlled less than half the star systems they used to rule. Billions of people had died from wars, plagues, and disasters that could have been prevented. The great civilizations that had once seemed so powerful and advanced were now struggling just to survive. Counselor Vextar sat alone in his office, looking at reports that got worse every day. His own people, the tree-like beings with multiple arms, were facing starvation because their food production systems had finally broken down completely. Without human agricultural experts, they had not been able to grow enough food to feed their population. The search for the 48 beacons had become a cruel joke. The Council's best teams had found only 12 beacons in 5 years. Each beacon led to the next through puzzles so complex that they required knowledge from dozens of different scientific fields. The humans had hidden their clues in ancient, mathematics, extinct languages, and scientific principles that most species had never discovered. It was becoming clear that the humans had never intended for the beacons to be found quickly. They were a test, a way to prove that the Council truly understood how valuable human knowledge had been. Vextar was reading a report about food riots on the Zenthari mining worlds when his assistant rushed into the office. The young being's bark was bright yellow with excitement. "Sir, you need to see this immediately," the assistant said, activating a holographic display. The display showed the outer edge of the star system where the Council maintained its headquarters. A fleet of ships was approaching, but these were not ships that anyone recognized. They were sleek and beautiful, with smooth curves and no visible weapons. They moved through space, with a grace that made even the most advanced Council ships look clumsy and primitive. "Who are they?" Vexatar asked, though something deep in his mind already knew the answer. "The ships are broadcasting a message," his assistant replied. "It is in the human language." The message played through the office speakers in Ambassador Lee Daeho's familiar voice, but he sounded different now. Confident, calm, not like someone asking for permission, but like someone who knew exactly what he wanted. "This is the human diplomatic fleet," the message said. "We request permission to dock at Council Station 12. We come in peace, but we come as equals, not as servants." Vextar felt his multiple hearts beating faster. After 5 years of searching, the humans had simply appeared without warning. But these were not the same humans who had left. Their ships were far more advanced than anything the Council had ever seen. Within hours, the Council chamber was filled with representatives from every surviving member species. They came despite the danger of traveling through space that was now full of pirates and hostile fleets. Everyone wanted to see the humans return. Admiral Shin Hae-jin entered the Council chamber wearing a uniform that was clearly military, but looked nothing like the simple clothes that human diplomats used to wear. The fabric seemed to shift and shimmer as she walked, and small devices attached to her belt hummed with power that the Council's sensors could not identify. Behind her walked Ambassador No Jun-ho, a man in his 30s with calm eyes and a slight smile. He carried no weapons, but somehow he seemed more dangerous than the armed guards who usually protected Council meetings. The chamber fell completely silent as the two humans walked to the center speaking platform. Vextar noticed that none of the Council members were whispering to their assistants or reading reports on their data pads. Everyone was staring at the humans with a mixture of hope and fear. "Honored Council," Ambassador No began, his voice carrying easily through the vast chamber. "We have returned to discuss the future relationship between humanity and the galactic community." Counselor Zekta, the Thraxi who had called humans useful pets 5 years ago, stood up on her 6 legs. Her voice was much quieter and more respectful than it used to be. "Where have you been?" she asked. "We have searched the entire galaxy looking for you." Admiral Shin smiled, but it was not a warm smile. "We went beyond the galaxy, Counselor Zekta. We found things in the dark spaces between the stars that you cannot imagine. We learned things that changed us in ways you would not understand." She activated a small device on her belt, and the air above the speaking platform filled with images. They showed vast structures floating in the emptiness between galaxies, machines so large they could have been planets, beings of pure energy that made the Council's energy species look like candles next to stars. "We were not alone out there," Admiral Shin continued. "There are civilizations far older and more advanced than anything in this galaxy. They taught us much. In return, we shared our knowledge of working together, of solving problems that seem impossible." The images faded, but their impact remained. Every being in the Council chamber understood that they were looking at technology beyond their wildest dreams. Ambassador No stepped forward. "We offer trade between equals, not service, not submission, trade." "What kind of trade?" asked Dr. Yexnim, the medical officer who had been fighting the plague for 5 years. "We will help rebuild what was lost," No replied. "We will share some of our new knowledge. We will teach you how to maintain the systems that keep your civilizations running. In return, we want formal recognition as a sovereign power with full rights in this council." "And if we refuse?" asked Counselor Vextar, though his voice showed he already knew they had no choice. Admiral Shin's smile became colder. "Then you continue as you have been. We return to the dark between galaxies and you solve your problems without us." The chamber erupted in urgent whispers as the council members talked among themselves. But the whispers died quickly as everyone realized. The same thing. They could not survive without human help. The last 5 years had proven that beyond any doubt. The negotiations took 3 days. The humans were polite but firm. They would help rebuild the galaxy, but only as partners, not as servants. They would share their new technologies, but only with civilizations that treated them with respect. They would solve the crisis that was destroying galactic civilization, but the price would be permanent changes to how the galaxy was governed. The final agreement was signed by every surviving member of the Galactic Council. Humanity became the first new council member in over a century, with voting rights equal to any other major civilization. Dr. Choi Ye-jin returned to her research and had a cure for the plague within weeks using techniques she had learned in the spaces between galaxies. Engineer Yoon Tai-ho fixed the quantum navigation systems and made them even better than before. Scientist Jang Min-ho rebuilt the atmospheric processors with improvements that would keep them running for thousands of years. But things were different now. The humans worked as partners, not servants. They were paid fairly for their expertise. They had the right to refuse requests they considered unreasonable. Most importantly, they had shown everyone in the galaxy that respect was not something to be given out of kindness, but something to be earned through recognition of true worth. The galaxy slowly healed from the wounds of the 5-year crisis. Trade routes reopened. Food production resumed. Wars ended as the civilizations that had been fighting realized they needed to work together to survive. Counselor Zekta, who had once called humans useful pets, now found herself working closely with human advisors on agricultural projects. She never apologized for her old words, but she never forgot them either. The humans had learned that being indispensable was not enough. They had to make others understand their value before that. Value would be respected. The galaxy had learned that some lessons come at a price too high to forget. In the end, everyone got what they needed. The galaxy got the expertise required to rebuild and thrive. The humans got the recognition and respect they had always deserved. And the council learned that true strength comes not from ruling others, but from working together as equals.